I've been doing a lot of speakings at universities and high schools lately. The number of people that identify themselves as progressives or socialists increases every day. Every single day, the Democratic Party gets bigger and the Republican Party gets smaller, and the election of Donald Trump has not only not stopped that, it will accelerate it. Because if you think that the left is just going to sit here and take this and go, well, that's democracy, no. You are going to see the left push back harder than you have ever seen anything in your life. They're going to start talking to kids in kindergarten now. And they're not going to give up. They're not going to go to sleep. This was inevitable walk to the workers' paradise, and the American people had the audacity to say no, and they will get even with the American people. Trust me on this. We have no idea. You have no idea what's coming in terms of the pushback. So, if we have a Republican Party that's getting older and older and older, and a Democratic Party that's getting younger and younger and younger, what do we do to make sure that what happened on Tuesday is not the last gasp of a great country that finally gave it a final struggle? How do we make sure that the future belongs to us and not to them? Because we need to face some facts right now. The future belongs to the Democrats and it belongs to the progressives. They've got terrible ideas, but they've got the numbers, and the numbers are increasing. So, I had thought I'd have to stand here and tell you after the third election of Barack Obama and progressivism what we need to do. And I'm going to say the same things I was going to say before, but what I want to say now is we have been given a window of opportunity. We have been given a moment's grace. We've been given a reprieve, but we have not been pardoned. We have some time. We have some time, finally. And if we don't move into that time and start making fundamental changes to the way this country is run, and not forget the way it's run, the way that young people come up, if we don't make changes there, this is going to be temporary, and I don't want it to be temporary. I want it to last forever. I want people to never forget what happened on Tuesday. So, how did the left get so successful? How did the left go from being maybe, 2 or 3% of the population in the late 50s, early 60s, to being 80%, 70 or 80%, 90% maybe, of the country's high school and college kids? 90% of them self-identify as socialists now? How did that happen? We know it took a long time, but how did it happen? And why did we let it happen, and why didn't it happen our way? Why? Our policies are better. Why did the left win and we not? The left won and achieved that incredible growth and success because the left had a plan. The left had a plan. David talks about this all the time, and Rules for Radicals, and Mike Walsh has written about this. The left had a plan. They had a plan in the mid-50s. They started to put it in place in the early 60s. The left had a plan. They executed the plan. They believed in the plan. They funded the plan. They never, ever, ever gave up on the plan, and they always knew that that plan was going to work for them, always. For 50 years, these leftists have had a plan that has not changed, and they've put billions and billions of dollars into it. They understood that the only way to change America was to start with young people and wait and wait. We were making all kinds of moves, and we were doing all this stuff assuming that nothing was ever happening, but in the colleges, as David will point out to you many times, the radicals started to grow, and they went into journalism school, and they started teaching new journalism students who, when they became 18 years old, were radicalized, and when they were 30 years old, they're teaching everybody else journalism. Now they're teaching regular kids journalism, which their kind of journalism means the truth is not important, the truth is important. The little truth, what actually happened, doesn't matter. The big truth, where we're going to our social paradise, that's what matters. So, they had a plan for 50 years, and they stuck to it. Now, after I realized this, just before the election, I realized about 3 weeks ago, where's our plan? I try to think I do good work. I know the center and the foundation do great work. I know everybody else out there, Milo and Matt and everybody else. They do great work. But where's the plan? And it struck me, we don't have a plan. And we never have had a plan, ever. We've never had a plan. We start throwing shots, just randomly firing shots in this rearguard action as we continue to retreat, and every now and then one or two of us turns around and fires a burst over their head just to keep their head down, but we have not had a plan, ever. So, what are we going to do? Well, the good news is, I got a plan. So let's talk about the plan. It's a very simple plan. There's only 5 points to it. But before we start, you need to understand the magnitude of what I'm talking about. It took them 50 years to corrupt this country. This plan is going to take 50 years to execute. And if we're not ready to be in for 2 generations, then we're going to lose. We have to have that same commitment to restoring America and making America great again that the left has had during all the years where Ronald Reagan was president, all the years when they thought they were done. They never gave up because they had a plan and they knew it would work. So I have a plan too, pretty much based on their plan. And here it is, 5 parts. Part number 1, we have got to win the hearts and minds of young Americans, period. We have to win their hearts and minds. How do we do that? Well, we have to give them stuff that makes telling the story of freedom cool and interesting and fun. We have to hand them hand grenades. We have to give them the tools to convince other people. I've had a chance to work with young conservatives now for, I don't know, the last several months certainly. I've been doing nothing but colleges and high schools. These kids are outnumbered 10 to 1, 20 to 1. They're physically intimidated. They're physically threatened. There are young conservatives in colleges now with conservative Republicans, Young Americans for Freedom, Turning Point. These kids have got tremendous courage, tremendous courage. But to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I went to a Turning Point USA event, and everybody was wearing a pin that says, "I heart capitalism." And they're wearing it on campus. And good for them, because that requires courage. But my point is, they have a button that says, "I heart capitalism." And if somebody comes up to them and says, "Well, why do you love capitalism?" What are they going to say? Why? They know it's good. They don't know how to explain why it's good. So we're going to start to conceptualize some of these things. I'm going to be doing some young videos, people for young people, as well as the firewalls. And I'm going to talk about economics. These first 5 videos are going to be on economics, because if you look at young people, they make a decision to become so-called socialists because they don't understand anything about how economies actually work. And when I say I'm going to talk about economics, I'm not talking about high-level economics. I'm going to do a video on money. What is money? What's money? Everybody can identify money, but nobody knows what it is. Every now and then somebody will say, well, money is a unit of exchange. Perfect example. That's exactly right. It's a unit of exchange. A unit of exchange of what? What? What are we exchanging when we buy something? Well, it turns out we're exchanging quality and value, but these are the kind of questions that they've never heard before. And when I go to young people, when they hear me talking about these things, their reaction's not one of hate. They just gasp and look at each other like, can you believe this guy just said that? The opportunities are amazing. You do not understand how thin this wide vein of socialism is, how thin it is. I've never met a progressive I couldn't flip in 15 minutes. But with 80 million of them, I don't really have that kind of time. So what do? We have to understand how viral systems work, which means that up here at the top of the information pyramid, we have to create very simple, very compelling arguments why capitalism is good, why America is good, why this works. We have to give it to young Republicans so that they can convert other young Republicans. And then those young Republicans start converting moderates. And then it's all over. We win. We win. Our story's much better than theirs is, but we have to understand that we have to get young people the ammunition they need to start this process of 40 years of recovering the country. If you wondered why somebody as awful and evil as Hillary Clinton could become a major party's nominee, it's because the American people are so morally corrupt that it doesn't bother them anymore. If we don't understand that this starts at the grassroots and goes up, we're going to lose. There's not going to be a politician that's going to save us. We have to fix the fundamentals. So number 1, we've got to get to young people with a message that they like, that's understandable, and in their own language. That's number 1. Second thing we have to do is we have to get back into the pop culture. I know a lot of people think that the pop culture is one of many battlefields, but it's not. You'll often hear people talking about movies or TV, or we need to get into that like it's another battlefield like politics, but it's not. The pop culture is the ocean that all of these other fish swim in. And we cannot expect the American people to follow us if we can't speak their language. I had a friend who said something very, very provocative. It really made me angry, but he was right. He said, you know, Barack Obama is really more American than Mitt Romney is. Oh, come on. No, he is. Barack Obama's been on Ellen. Barack Obama's downloaded songs from iTunes. Barack Obama knows a Simpsons reference. Barack Obama can talk about The Walking Dead. Barack Obama speaks the language of the people. And so we need to get into the pop culture. And our problem is when we try to do movies or TV or music, we try to make conservative movies or TV or music. And that's not how it works. We have to make excellent and interesting and cool music and TV and music that happens to be made by conservatives. If you look back at the early to mid-1960s, Hollywood, which belonged to us then, was a conservative institution. Hollywood was making films like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Paint Your Wagon and all this milquetoast nonsense, and the left comes out with a film like Easy Rider. Is Easy Rider about the benefits of socialism? No. No, Easy Rider was interesting and different and cool, but Easy Rider showed us a dark America, and it showed us an evil America, and people went to see it by the millions, and they said, this is really cool, and they started absorbing all of those values the way that the pop culture will put values into your head. So we cannot make the Ronald Reagan story because nobody will listen to that. We have to make interesting movies about vampires and space aliens and all the rest that are made by conservatives that don't speak a word of politics, but they use things like they have their own weapons, they have their own cars, they're trying to stop this overpressing government, so on. We've got to get back in the pop culture, and if we can smell politics in the products we put out, then we have failed. It's got to be absolutely invisible, the way that the values of the left are invisibly implanted in the minds of our kids. That's number 2. Number 3 is we have to outflank the mainstream news media. We just have to. Now, many of you have said and asked me and talked to each other about how do we change the news media. We do not change the news media. This is the most corrupt institution morally in the United States. It is. They are the most ideologically left-wing organization in the country. The news media today is the publicity department for the progressive movement. And if you think you're going to change them, you're wrong. Now, I said outflank them. I didn't say change them. The good news here is that we do not have to defeat the mainstream news media because the mainstream news media is dying right in front of our eyes. It's just rolling over and dying right in front of our eyes. So if we're going to have a plan that wins, we ought to look at our advantages as well as our disadvantages. And one of our advantages is that young people don't watch CNN, and they certainly don't read the New York Times. I'm not sure they can read it all, to be honest with you. But they're not reading the Times, and they're not reading Time Magazine, and they're not watching CNN or MSNBC. They're not watching any of this. People under 30 are getting their news from YouTube. They're getting news from Facebook, from Instagram. You may not like it, but it's true. They're getting their news from social media. That's wonderful for us because we can play in social media. We can make connections in social media. We don't need to spend billions of dollars to buy network television. We just have to make more of a presence where we are. And the more young people that start speaking a conservative message from point 1, the more of these voices we're going to hear. We should have thousands and thousands of YouTube channels for people who are conservatives, people who are old men, young women, gay men. Everybody should be telling their story of what freedom means to me, so that instead of me telling somebody something 100 times, 100 people tell that person something once. Much more effective. So the news media is dying. And the reason we can say this is because everybody remembers the video of Hillary staggering into the car on 9/11, right? When she collapsed into the van. It's a perfect example. The mainstream news media said that she misstepped, that she stumbled. No, she collapsed. How do we know that she collapsed? Did we see it on CNN? No, because CNN didn't have cameras there. And if CNN had cameras there, we never would have seen it anyway. They just would have sat on it. We know that Hillary Clinton was at the point of collapse because 2 private citizens had their cell phones on them and shot video that was uploaded to the internet before any network even knew that there was something going on. My friends, we live in a country now, we live in a world where 180 million Americans carry high-definition television cameras in their pockets at any given time. In the time it takes CNN to get a crew together, put them in a van, get them down to the spot, get the lights up and the guy with the microphone, it's over, it's done. It's not only over and done, but millions of people have already seen it live streamed in time, real time, to the internet because of these things. We do not have to replace the news media. The news media is going away. We have 180 million citizen journalists. We don't need to recruit them. We don't need to organize them. The signal is getting out. And this is why Hillary Clinton lost the election. She actually thought that she could keep secrets in this age, and it's just not going to happen anymore. So the news media is gone, and we are going to take its place one way or another. Number 4 is very controversial, but I deal with a lot of people out there in the real world, and I know what Americans are hungry for. I think Donald Trump reflects this attitude. Number 4 is we need a new kind of politician. And please pay attention that I did not say we need a new politician. We need new kinds of politicians. We keep waiting for where's our next Reagan? Is Rubio our next Reagan? Is it going to be Ted Cruz? No, this is a top-down answer to a bottom-up problem. It doesn't matter. Ronald Reagan could rise from the dead today. He'd still be looking good, by the way. He'd be looking better than Hillary, certainly. And he could get up on this podium and say exactly what he said in the 1980s, and it wouldn't have any effect. Because it's not those times anymore. Young people have been socialized from the time they're 4 or 5 years old. So we need something dramatic, and we need a new kind of politician. Now, obviously, this is my personal opinion, but if I wanted to win the votes of every American for the rest of time, I would say, here's my political party. My party has essentially one platform, and the platform that our party has is no re-election to the same office, period. What? No re-election. What do you mean? I mean, if we elect a representative, he goes to Washington, he does 2 years, he comes home. That's not politics. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because we need to find people of a special brand. We need a new kind of politician. We need to be able to interview people and say, would you like our endorsement for the U.S. Senate? And they go, we sure would. You don't have the job. You're not who we're interested in. We need to find politicians who look at 2 years or 4 years or 6 years in Washington the way that you would look at as a 2-year jury duty that you couldn't get out of. It's your social obligation, and you can't get out of it. The people we need in Washington, not just Republicans either, we need people who say, I can't go to Washington. I can't go to Washington for 2 years. I've got a family. I've got a business to run. I can't just leave and go. Those people will change Washington because they won't be politicians. They'll be citizens who happen to be in the legislature for a period of time, and that is how this republic was meant to be. We have got to destroy this priesthood that lives in Washington and has become so elite and so centralized that they just love to tell us what to do. There are a couple of benefits to this in terms of selling the American people. First of all, we can say, you want to get money out of politics? In our party, there is no money in politics. Why? Because money is used to influence politicians for their re-election. We're not getting re-elected. Next question. We're free of corruption. We're free of influence. Our guys go back home. But the main point we can say is this. We can say, listen, we believe in this because we Republicans think that with 320 million people, we should be able to find 525 representatives, 100 senators, and 50 governors who aren't complete idiots. If we can't find that number of people in 320 million people, we don't deserve to govern ourselves. We don't deserve it. People say, well, the bureaucracy will change this. Well, the bureaucracy determines how things are done. If I was a representative and one of my bureaucrats said, well, Mr. Whittle, that's not how things are done around here. You see, here's the way Washington works. I would say, let's stop right here. I represent 450,000 people from the 2nd Congressional District in California. You don't represent anybody. I'm the voice of the people. You're a hired bureaucrat. You're not going to tell me how things work in Washington. I'm going to tell you how things work in Washington. And the first thing that's going to happen in Washington is you're fired. That's how it's done. That's how it's done when politics is not your life. When you have a home to go back to, you can make these kind of statements because you genuinely don't care. You're not in it for the jets and the golf courses and the honorable this and the... No. It's duty. You go to Washington, you come back and do your stuff. If you tell that to the American people, they're going to vote you in overwhelming numbers. Now, the fifth point is the most controversial point, and it's also the most important point. This is especially tough for people to understand after we've been at such incredible state of warfare for so long now. But the fifth, final, and most important point is this. We have got to steal the progressives' weapons. We've got to steal their weapons. Sun Tzu said that the ultimate form of warrior is swordlessness. Swordlessness is the ability of a warrior to walk unarmed into the enemy camp and kill them all using their weapons. What does this mean? It means that as long as there's somebody protesting in the streets of Ferguson with their fist in the air, talking about Black Lives Matter, if we don't have a plan for that person, then somebody else will. And they will continue to use that hardship, they'll continue to use that sadness, all of that empathy will be used for the continuing control of those populations. We have to go in there and set those people free. We don't like rioting in the streets of a major American city, and we don't like to admit this, but these are Americans, these are our fellow citizens, and they've been living under progressive tyranny for 100 years. We have to have a plan to go in there and help those people be free, and if we don't, somebody else will take that audience, and we will continue to lose. We have to have a plan for all Americans. Freedom works for everybody or it doesn't work at all. And if we understand this, if we understand that we have to reach everybody in the country, then there won't be any reason for progressives anymore. Progressives have the power that they have and growing power with young people because we're perceived as we just don't care. And to be honest with you, we've walked away from a lot of these issues. We cannot walk away from them. We have to have a better solution for them. Donald Trump started to do this. He went to black churches, and it made a big difference. So we have to be prepared to do this. We have to be prepared to help everybody, not with a big government program, but just to show them what freedom is. We have to show them why freedom is better than their current slavery. That's pretty much the plan. It's pretty much it. I am in this for the long term. I don't expect to see that I'm going to live the end to see these changes that we're talking about. I know the people that started the big program on the left, many of them didn't live to see the end of it. But we have been given through God or just the will of the American people or both, we have been given a window, a small period where we can stop the bleeding. And what we have to do now is we have to stop thinking about politics for a minute. We have to stop thinking about policy. We have to stop all of this up here stuff. And we have to understand that we have to get to where the grass is growing and get in there big and hard and wide and let the grass grow up, be the grass of freedom, and just slowly triage out all these poor people who've been ruined by 4 decades of progressive education. It's a serious plan. It's a big plan. It's a hard plan. It's a depressing plan, and it's an expensive plan. But look, the left has got George Soros, and they've got Bill Gates, and they've got Warren Buffett, and we have you. We have you. And we have every single other American citizen out there. That's who we've got. We have people who'd rather be free than be slaves. It's a lot more money than these people can throw at it. But if we don't understand the plan that they backed and backed and backed and that succeeded, then we're never going to beat these people. And I don't want to come back up here again and stand here in 4 years and talk about another defeat and why we lost. I don't ever want to have that experience ever again, to be honest with you. So think about it. Think about it. We need a plan, and the plan makes sense, and it's got to be a serious plan, and it is. We're going to need all the resources we can have. Because as I would say when I would be doing a fundraiser for veterans, we're wondering how much you might want to contribute to these injured veterans, what's an appropriate amount to give. And I'll tell those people, well, if these veterans hadn't been here and been wounded, and all of your freedoms had gone, and your children went to school under sniper fire, and your wife was mortared on the way to the grocery store, if that happened here, how much money would you give to get it back? You'd give all of it. Give all of it to get it back. This is the stakes that we're talking about. This is a real opportunity. We cannot be lazy now. Now is the time we've got to run these bastards into the river. So many wars have been lost because the army that won a big victory just stood there on the battlefield and celebrated. They're disorganized, they're terrified, they're running for their lives. Now is the time to get behind those people with some cavalry and never let them rest ever. I want them looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. I want some offense. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Because unlike the speech I had prepared for you 3 or 4 days ago, which was a speech of now things are desperate, now things are serious, I can close this speech tonight by saying this. It can work. It can work. You have a politician who tells the American people the truth and tells them the true story of America, and the American people will rise up behind you. It works. It did work. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. These couldn't figure out the polls because polls measure likely voters. And this election 2 days ago was won by unlikely voters. That's who won the election. So think it over. Think about it very seriously. Understand that we don't have to talk about a big organization that controls everybody. We just have to have a vision of where this country needs to go and how we're going to get there. Which is why it's always such a pleasure to come and talk to you people. You fine patriots who put up with so much defeat and so much agony, and we're expecting more of the same, I'm sure, tonight. Let's make sure that we use this euphoria and this joy to make sure that we never lose this feeling again. We have to go out there and start young and keep going, and we have to go wide, and I know we can count on you with your support in the years to come. It's such an honor to be here, and it's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking with all of you about it once we get to see the daylight come again, because it's morning in America, folks. We're going to make America great again.